friends, we're back today to film another video. Today I want to talk about the books that I read in February. My goal is for this to be a short video. Let's see how it works. Whenever my daughter is here for the video, things are a little unpredictable. So let's talk about the books that we read in February, okay? Overview, I think I read 13 books. My goal was to read about 16, but since my goal, and the goal for 16 was because I needed to make up for some lower numbers in January. But I read about 13, which is my monthly goal generally. So I'm hoping that in the rest of the year I will be able to catch up with my downfall. Is that the proper word? Let's just talk about the books. So the first book that I read was Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zorinho Hurston. This copy was a gift from Doris from All the Books. And that's because I hadn't read this book before. But February being Black History Month, I tried to focus on books by African American authors especially. And I think I did a good job where that was concerned. I'm not going to talk too much about this book, not going to talk too much about any of the books, but especially this one because I think everyone else has read this book and so you know what the story is about. It's about a young woman who is pursuing love. She was raised by her grandmother because she was abandoned, and when her grandmother is dying, the grandmother's wish is for her to be married, and so she marries her off to someone who this young woman, Janie, doesn't love, because she thinks that she should have some kind of security in her life. And it's about how she tries to live life on her own terms. What are some of the things that she does pursuing love, and where does that net her? The writing is fantastic. Zorinho Hurston is a master at the craft of storytelling, and so we start the story kind of in the end, so we know that this young woman, although she's been pursuing love, she hasn't found enduring love, I suppose. And so we know that in the beginning, and then we go back to revisit how it comes that even though she's pursuing these relationships, that she hasn't quite been successful. The writing is phenomenal. There's dialect, there is just like poetry. The characters are very authentically presented, so you feel like you are right there in the South in Florida and seeing all the challenges that these blacks face with trying to build their own life in that period after slavery. So it's wonderful. So that was the first book that I finished in February. The second book I read was for the publishers. I had to review this one, Back to Business by McSharry, Jensen, and Sarah Duenwald. But this one really resonated with me because it's about women who have taken time off from careers to work specifically in the home, work as caregivers, whether they are mothering children or being daughters for, you know, elderly parents and so on. But they've taken time from their corporate jobs and now are looking to re-enter the workforce. And what are the challenges that a woman who has been away from her field for some time face, just in the fact that she's been away from technology and whatever advances may have occurred in her profession, but also because quite likely she's a little older than the regular entry-level job applicant. And so what are some of the challenges? And these two authors, of course, give options, they give tips, they give advice on how to maneuver through that process and be successful at it. So this really resonated with me. I really enjoyed the writing. I thought it was timely. You know, this is a book that I really wanted to read, and I got some really good information here, and some of the things that I didn't even realize that would be impediments for me, the authors tackled, but also gave me ways to not be bogged down by those obstacles, or not be deterred by those obstacles, I should say. So that was fantastic. Back to Business by McSharry, Jensen, and Sarah Duenwald. And this one was a gift from HarperCollins Leadership. So just say that. Then we get to this one, Here for It by R. Eric Thomas. This is a memoir. And I got this one from the publishers last year, and I got it right at the end of February when I was leaving for, well, I was about to leave for Jamaica, so I didn't really get to it. And then I went to Jamaica and came back, and the world was very different, and I was not really reading a lot of some of the things that I probably should have read. So I decided I would read this this year, a year later, a year after publication, but still really interesting. So R. Eric Thomas is, I should show you his picture because there's a section where he talks about distinguishing himself from other people who have similar names. So it's a memoir, and it is by, this is a man's memoir, a gay man, of course. I don't know if I should say of course, but the fact that this cover is pink and that there's confetti on the front, you know, maybe you will think that this is someone else. So the subtitle of this one is Or How to Save Your Soul in America. R. Eric Thomas is talking about timely issues and how he came to become himself. He gives some really humorous stories here, and the writing is just really well done. He is known for being a writer. He wrote for Elle magazine. I'm not sure if he still does that, but he wrote this, he said he called it a daily pop culture and politics humor column entitled Eric Reads the News, and he did that for several years. He's also written for the New York Times and other publications, and like I said, his writing is really humorous. He speaks a lot about pop culture. He's speaking about current affairs, current events, but he's also talking about his process of becoming. And so he goes back a little bit into his memory bank and talks about college life and what it's like trying to find your tribe when you're in college, but you aren't among people that you think are like you. So, you know, what it was like being recruited to join the black students group at his university and so on. Funny, really, really funny, and so I would recommend this. Like I said, this was also a gift from the publishers, and this one came from Penguin Random House last year. So that was another gift, and I'm always just so appreciative of books that publishers send me. I don't think that I rate books higher because they're gifts, but I always enjoy the opportunity to read and review, and I try to be honest here with you guys. So then I read 2 books by Tayari Jones because I was doing a little spotlight on Instagram for Didi from Read So Lit. She asked me to think about an African-American author that I'd like to feature and talk about them, and I decided to review the books of Tayari Jones. Maybe mini reviews. I don't know if review is really the proper term, but I decided to read all of Tayari Jones's novels. So I'd previously read An American Marriage a few years ago, and in January I had read Silver Sparrow and really liked it. I read that for a project that I'm doing with Doris, again from Aldi Books, and so I decided to read her other 2 novels, and so I read first Leaving Atlanta, which is just really, really, really good. Leaving Atlanta is set in Atlanta, and it is focusing on so it's novelizing a real crime event that happened in the 1980s, 1982 I think it was, where someone was attacking and kidnapping and murdering children, African-American children, in an inner city community in Atlanta. And Tayari Jones talks about that event from the perspective of 3 children who are all connected with this crime wave in some way. And one of the children's perspective that we read from is a victim. So we meet this character and we see why they make some of the choices that they do, and then we realize when the perspective changes that this person was a victim. And so it was really harrowing to read. It was really harrowing to read, but also I think she really went into the minds of the children and what they would have been experiencing during this time, for them to, thank you, baby girl. Let's put that over there, okay? I think this was really brilliant in that the author went into the mind of what children would have been facing, children who have been exposed to crime, but also children who are just living their life, and their regular coming of age story is being interrupted by really traumatic and significant events. And so I thought it was a really great book. The writing is, it wasn't perfect, but I thought it was a really strong novel, and this was her debut. So I read that, and then I read The Untelling, which was the book that she followed it up with. This is her sophomore book. Is that true? I don't know what I'm telling you. I can't remember if this is her debut, but this is earlier in her career. Her final book, of course, was An American Marriage. I'm a little distracted. I hope that that's not making this video unbearable to watch. But I followed it up with her next book. So after this, The Untelling is about how women process trauma. So we're reading about a woman who, as a child, her family was in a car accident and she lost her father and her baby sister. And it's about how this woman has grown up in that family, how her mother handled the trauma, but also how she has been raised to think about her father and her baby sister being lost, and the relationship that she has with her remaining sister. It starts with that, but it also focuses on her life as an adult and some of the choices that she's made as a professional. She is working with people who are living with substance abuse issues, and so she and her roommate live in this neighborhood where there are addicts around. And it's about how she's trying to move past her past, but also still living like a victim in a lot of ways. So the book is really about how people, women, but people in general, how they process loss. And so we see other people in this story processing loss as well, and we see some of the choices that they make in their lives, and we get to judge them. But it was wonderful. I thought it was also really well written. There, of course, were flaws. These books are not perfect, but I think that these are really great examples of how Tayari Jones reflects her community. And so I highly recommend them for that reason. I also read Tambourines to Glory by Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes is known for his poetry. I've read his poetry. My favorite, of course, is probably his most well-known poem, About a Dream Deferred. But in this, I got an opportunity to see a little bit more of his prose writing, and I thought that this was really, really cleverly done to represent the Harlem community, a different view of the Harlem community. Here we are reading about two women who are down on their luck. They're kind of desperate. They're living on welfare as Black people in the middle of the 1900s, and there aren't a lot of opportunities for economic advancement, and so, but these people don't lack for ingenuity. So we have these two women who decide that they are going to start a church. They're going to get into the religion business. They're not necessarily converted at first, and along the way, one of them becomes a little bit more authentic about her relationship with God, but they're really trying to just manipulate the people around them using religion as the opium of the masses, but not just the opium, because they're using it as it's not just to deaden the senses, it's also to take advantage of the addiction. So this was really great in that respect. We get to explore what people do as they try to get ahead in their lives. So we get to explore ambition from lots of different perspectives, and I thought that this was great. The story is not a happy ending. The story is not a happy ending, but I thought that this was really clever. And this one is a short novel. It's just about 155 pages, and this particular copy was a gift from Patrice Jones, and so I just love that my friends send me books, and give me opportunities to experience literature, really great literature from their recommendations. I love it. So far, all the books that I have read, no, I did buy the Tayari Jones myself, so I was going to say all of these were gifts, but they're not. So of the first 6 books, 4 of them were gifts, and 2 of them I bought myself. These are really great stats. I had these arranged, but the little one has decided to rearrange. That's fine. The next book was another gift from the publishers. This was a book that I had to feature on Instagram. They only asked me to feature it on Instagram, but I was intrigued by the title and the cover, and so I read the book, and I read it in a day, I think, and it was really good. This is Lorianne Gibson's memoir. Lorianne Gibson is a woman of Jamaican descent, but she grew up in Canada, and then she moved to the United States to pursue her ambition. She moved to New York when she was 17 to pursue her dance ambitions. She enrolled in Alvin Ailey's dance theater, dance studio, and she was really good as a dancer. She was really talented, which is why her Jamaican parents didn't dissuade her and tell her to follow another dream, which is usually what immigrant parents advise their children. But in here she addresses that. She talks about how her mother herself had creative ambitions and she was dissuaded, so she didn't want to put off her own child. So she was encouraged by her family, and that's why she was able to do some of the things that she did. And it's a wonderful story about how, although she was determined, there were of course obstacles in her life. All right. There were obstacles in her life, and you know, she gives you a lesson with how she discovered her faith and her relationship with God and what that's like, how that motivates her every day. And it's a wonderful story. Did I mention that it was co-written with Mark D'Agostino, and really well written? Like I said, I read this in a day, and it's not that it's a tiny book. It's about 180 pages, and I really enjoy faith-based memoirs. I like when people credit the higher power in their life and acknowledge how they were able to overcome missteps and so on. So yeah, highly recommend this one as well. Like I said, this was another gift from the publishers. This was from Thomas Nelson Publishers. They publish faith-based books, a lot of them. So I also have more. Then I read Brother I'm Dying by Edwidge Danticat. Edwidge Danticat is from Haiti. Her parents are from Haiti. She was born in Haiti, and she moved to the United States when she was about 12. I think she was 12, yeah. She talks about it in the book. This book is a memoir, but it's not her memoir so much as it is the memoir of her family and her country. In this story, Edwidge Danticat talks about the 2 men who fulfilled that fatherly role in her life. Her biological father and his brother, her uncle, who raised her for 8 years when she was a child. So again, she was born in Haiti, and she had a younger brother, and her parents decided to come to the United States, and they left her and her brother in the care of the father's older brother. So that man raised her until she was about 12. She and her brother came to the United States and reunited with her parents and her 2 other siblings. And so in this story, she talks about growing up with her family in the United States, but also growing up in Haiti and what that was like, the difference in the cultures, the difference in experiences. She goes a little bit into the political unrest that propelled her parents to move, but also forced her uncle away, and some of the political issues that still exist today in terms of immigration and how people from Haiti especially are perceived. The reason for this title is that in this book she starts with talking about how her father is dying, but because she has 2 men who are fatherly, it's really about the loss of the 2 men. And this was really, really emotional. There was a point in here where I had to stop and cry, but it was also fast-paced. This is the kind of book, it's the kind of memoir that if you don't like nonfiction, you could read it and it feels like a novel. And it's just powerful, and her storytelling ability comes through in here, and it's just wonderful. So Edwidge Dantecott, Haitian author, Read Caribbean, Caribathon coming up in June. So yeah, pick up something like that if you'd like. So then the next book that I got from the publishers was Falling Home by Hallie Lord. And Hallie Lord is a wife and mother, and she has a channel on Sirius FM. And some of the other reviewers of this book have mentioned that some of the stories that she includes here, she talks about on her radio station. I didn't know anything about her radio station, so that didn't bother me. But I really enjoyed this. Other people who critiqued this book said that it started off a little different from the way it ended. And I guess I could agree with that, because I didn't always feel like I knew where this book was going. It is a memoir, so you know, you don't always expect people's lives to follow a theme, but she shared some really interesting stories here, and I enjoyed reading this. She has 8 children, and she writes in a very intimate way about her experience with her family. She's also in the process of refining or redefining her relationship with the man who is or was her husband. So she talks about their relationship. She talks about some of the changes that have happened in their life. I mean, if you've had 8 children together, you've experienced a lot together. And she talks about how beautifully they co-parent, you know, and how grateful she is to this man for the family that they built together. But you're also seeing, you know, as you're reading, you're wondering, for people who might no longer be together, what of the story is she not sharing? So that was really interesting. So we're getting through everything. Yeah. You're going to show the internet everything we have on the table. So this is a piece of cardboard that I decided to save so we could do a little game with it later. That's from some cups. All right. So let me put you down so you could play with the box, okay? Sit. Just come down here. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Oh, it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. You could read the book. Okay? Yeah. So I thought that this was really interesting. I thought it was intriguing because all of these stories were new to me. And if they're not new to you, maybe you might have a different experience, but I really like that book. So that was, thank you, Pumpkin. So that was Falling Home by Hallie Lord. I covered up my notes. So the next books are for the Run Right Reads Book Club. I read These Ghosts of Family by Maisy and Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis-Benn, and I'm going to do a separate video where I review these 2 books, so I'm not going to talk too much about them here. This one is about ghosts. It's about ghosts in our family, essentially. It's about how people, you might think that they have left your life, but how the relationship still lingers and how it impacts your life. So I'm gonna think a little bit more about that, of course, before I make that video. And Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis-Benn approaches colorism and the experience of colorism in Jamaica. It also talks a lot about the different experiences of people across the socioeconomic spectrum in Jamaica, how the challenges sometimes that people who are ambitious might face in just trying to rise up out of poverty, and what are some of the factors that prevent them from doing so. And again, a lot of that is about color, but it's also about complexion, because we're talking about a country that is majority black, but people who are of light complexion have a different experience than people who are of darker skin hue. And yeah, so both of these books were set in Jamaica because for the Run Right Reads Book Club in February, we were reading books from Jamaica. So video on that coming soon. I also read Kane by Jean Toomer. I listened to an audio version, but I'm not including that in my wrap-up because I am going to be rereading a print version because I feel like my experience was not, like I feel like it wasn't cohesive enough of a read in order for me to really grasp everything that was in the book. So I'm not going to talk about it here. I'm going to be including that later when I read the print version. So I didn't include that in my numbers. The next book that I finished was Xlibris by Michiko Kakutani. This was a gift from Penguin Random House. This is subtitled 100 Books to Read and Reread. Michiko Kakutani, of course, is the New York Times book review editor, I think is her title. And she's a Pulitzer Prize winning literary critic, pardon me. So in this book, she is compiling her list of 100 books that she would recommend that if you haven't read them, read them. And if you have read them, experience them again, maybe with a little bit more time and space dedicated to them, just so you can absorb the gravity and the richness of these books. Why are you crawling? Okay, we're wrapping up. We only have one more book to talk about briefly. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I didn't read every page in this book, so that's my disclaimer, because there were some books that she mentioned that I hadn't read and I didn't want to be spoiled. And I say that because of the books that I did read, I felt like she gave a lot. Like the first book in here is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And if I hadn't already read that book, I feel like maybe I would know a little bit too much of where the book goes. So I didn't read every page. I read most of the pages. Because by the time I read some of those books, I'm not going to remember what she said. But I thought that she did a really in-depth job of showing the beauty of each one of these books that she mentioned. And she puts them in categories. And so I'm thinking that I'm going to make a separate video for this book as well, where I go through some of the lists that she has created and talk a little bit more about that. So yeah, look out for that video coming soon. I have a lot more videos to make. I just, haven't had time. So the last book that I finished in February was The Business of We by Laura Kriska, and it was the last book because I had read parts of it earlier in the month and then I'd kind of put it down, and so I had to come back. So this one, again, I read this from the publishers to review. This is from HarperCollins Leadership, and this one is about how we are biased in our workplaces and how we shoot ourselves in the foot from not allowing people from diverse backgrounds to be parts of our groups because we lose the wealth that they could bring with their diverse backgrounds. That's really the gist of this book. I thought it was really, what should I say? The lessons in this book, I think, could be applied in just any sector of your life. I thought she was pretty honest in how she explored the biases that exist in our society, the race bias and the prejudice from our our history, and also our present. So I think this is a book that although this book was written for a corporate setting, I think these are lessons that could be learned by anyone. But the problem with books like these is that the people who probably need to read them the most might not be the ones picking them up. So yeah, if you think that this is a book that maybe your supervisor or your company CEO should read, then maybe you send them a copy anonymously. So yeah, those are the books that I read in February. I'm going to be making another video soon where I talk about my March TBR. We're already several days into March, but I'm still going to make that video because I haven't started my March reading. Full disclosure, I didn't finish a couple of these books. I didn't finish them until March 1st because I used March 1st as my unofficial February 29th to finish up some books that I was not quite done with, like this book. So I took some time to just be, so I haven't started my March reading, which is why I'm looking forward to Doris's readathon next weekend because we all need that catch-up time. So yeah, those are the books that formed my February experience. Black History Month was wonderful. I read how many books by Black authors? About 8 of the 12 books, 13. 8 of the 13 books that I read, Black or African American authors, so that was wonderful. So yeah, would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Let me know how. Okay, all right. You can't step on the tiles. If you step on the tiles, you might slip. Okay. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sorry if I wasn't doing a good enough job speaking above the child. Her babble sometimes. So thank you so much for watching this video. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Would love to hear from you down below. What was the best book that you read in February? How did you celebrate Black History Month? And what was your experience like? So would love to hear from you down there. And until next time, happy reading. Bye. Wave. Bye. Say bye. You see your friends? Your friends. Those are your friends. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. So on the first page, she introduces two people and she doesn't really say who one of them. She doesn't say who they are to her specifically. Eventually you learn that the other person is one of her children, and she talks about her husband and his relationship with her husband and her relationship with her family. She also shares that she's in the process of Zora Neale Hurston. This was a gift from Doris from all the books, and everyone knows what this book is about, so I'm not going to talk too long about it. Again, I'm not going to talk too long about any of the books. But, February is Black History Month, and so I was trying to read a lot of books by